The nation's biggest banks made a dramatic move today to rescue a smaller bank and head off a potential crisis. 11 of the top financial institutions, including Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and Citibank.
The sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank on Friday is the biggest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
The U.S. banking system is facing a serious and growing problem of bank failures, which means that the banks are unable to meet their obligations or continue their operations and have to be closed by the regulators. These small bank failures affect hundreds of banks serving local communities and businesses. If these banks eventually shut down, it will affect the availability and accessibility of financial services, as well as the stability and confidence of the banking system. Today, we're going to analyze the issues affecting small banks and how it can be rectified. Why multiple small banks getting ready to shut down? There are several factors responsible for the wave of failure that is hitting small banks in the U.S. This includes the COVID-19 pandemic, a global health crisis that has been caused by a novel coronavirus, which infected over 200 million people and killed over 4 million people worldwide. The COVID-19 pandemic affected small banks by reducing their income and increasing their expenses, as well as by increasing the risk and uncertainty of the banking environment. The pandemic also reduced the income of small banks by limiting the demand for and repayment of loans, as well as the fees and commissions for services. It worsened the expenses of the small banks by raising the provision and write-off of the bad loans and increasing the cost and complexity of the operations. Due to the shutdown of the economy during the pandemic, many governments applied different policies to rescue their countries. For instance, the U.S. Treasury set a low interest rate. These are the rates charged or paid for using money, such as the rates set by the central bank, the rates that the banks charge for loans, or the rates that the banks pay for the deposits. The low interest rates have affected small banks by reducing their profitability and sustainability and increasing the competition and consolidation of the banking industry. It also decreased the profitability and sustainability of the small banks by reducing the net interest margin, which is the difference between the interest income and the interest expense of the banks, and by lessening the net interest income, which is the main source of income for the small banks. The low interest rates have also increased the competition and consolidation of the banking industry by lowering the barriers and incentives for the entry and exit of the banks, as well as by increasing the pressure and attraction for the merger and acquisition of the banks. Another reason for the issues facing small banks is high competition. This involves other financial institutions that offer similar or substitute products or services, such as loans, deposits, payments, or investments. The high competition has affected small banks by reducing their market share and customer loyalty and increasing the cost and innovation of banking products and services. Although this competition usually presents many advantages, the situation of the economy meant that it reduced the market share and customer loyalty of the small banks by reducing the differentiation and advantage of the small banks over the large banks or the non-bank competitors, such as the fintech companies or the big tech companies, which can offer lower prices, higher convenience, or better quality. It increased the cost and innovation of banking products and services by requiring small banks to invest more in technology, infrastructure, or marketing, and develop more new or improved products or services to attract and retain customers. Additionally, we have the regulatory burden. This is where the banks have to comply with many rules and regulations that are imposed by the authorities, such as the federal, state, or local governments, or the agencies, such as the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, the Federal Reserve, or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. To better manage the economy, these government agencies have to work through banks by introducing certain policies or removing some barriers.
This morning, the government is deploying emergency measures to stop a potential banking crisis, including the takeover of another regional bank.
This regulatory duty has affected small banks by increasing the complexity and difficulty of banking operations and activities and increasing the risk and penalty of banking compliance and supervision. It has increased the complexity and difficulty of banking operations and activities by requiring small banks to follow many standards and procedures, such as capital, liquidity, or risk management, or to report any data and information, such as financial, operational, or customer data. The regulatory burden has also increased the risk and penalty of banking compliance and supervision by exposing small banks to more audits, examinations, fines, and sanctions if they fail to meet the rules and regulations. Navigating economic challenges, other causes of the bank failure. The commercial real estate market crisis is sending shockwaves through the banking sector, with hundreds of small banks facing the risk of shutting down. Approximately 20% of all commercial real estate loans in the United States, totaling a staggering $1.4 trillion, are set to be refinanced this year. A whopping $929 billion of commercial real estate debt is set to mature in the next 18 months. The consequences of this debt bomb are disastrous, as it could potentially lead to the collapse of 231 banks over the next 10 months. Experts warn that this crisis has the potential to surpass the impact of the 2008 financial crisis if the Federal Reserve doesn't take decisive action. However, recent indicators...
Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahushai is what the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahushai. And pretty much, as you see, concerning the de-dollarization that's going on, you know, all these commercial banks, aka small banks, is closing down. You know, society or the economy here in America, it hasn't been able to recover since the, pandemic, concerning the disease outbreak that happened a few years ago. So now that everything is catching up, according to the markets and according to these different businesses, they realize that they can't recover. And this is causing what? The unemployment rate to go up. And this is causing a lot of big banks, so-called, to close down. But it's all a part of their plan, because part of their plan to implement a new world order, which is a cashless digital society in which they plan to merge you to this system through the RFID chip implant, which is the mark of the beast, according to the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter. They have to cause a global economic collapse in order to usher in a new system worldwide that's governed and controlled by the central bankers. All right, so everything is going according to plan. And you see that all these countries, they all have a central bank in it, and all of them is getting ready to implement a CBDC currency, a central bank digital currency, all right, which is programmable money that could be programmed on a device. And part of the CBDC agenda is to program the currency on a device and make it mandatory, all right? So when that time period comes, reject it, pursuant to Revelation, the 14th chapter. So now I'm going to go here. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 22 and verse 7. It says, the rich ruleth over the poor. Now, who's the rich? As you can see on this chart right here, this is a new world order chart, all right, that shows you how the Edomites, pursuant to 2nd Ezra 6 and 9 and plenty of other scriptures, how the Edomites, which is the so-called white man in the sea line, how they are in power and how they control the planet Earth, all right? As you can see here, the rich ultimately is who? The central bankers, right? The Rothschilds, which the word Rothschild, it means red shield, all right? So you have the Rothschilds as the overlords. Then you have the Astor, Bundy bloodline. You have all these different bloodlines. Kennedy, Rockefeller. These are like key families that people are familiar with, right? But look at what they control. It says foundation nations of the New World Order. They control financial groups, right? The IMF, the World Bank, central banks, Federal Reserve Bank of International Settlement, which is the central bank for all countries, right? Research institutions, aka the schools and stuff of that nature. Secret society groups, as you can see here, in which when you have these Hebrew Israelite camps sell out, you have these particular sect of secret societies, the main one being the Rosicrucians, that cause these particular camps, to sell out. They'll come with bribes. And you'll have camps, outside of Great Millstone, camps that's under the 501c3 charter that consent to the Rosicrucians, and then they start changing their doctrine. Next thing you know, they start implementing Roman Catholic doctrine. They start teaching things that's, contrary to what they've been taught and what's in the scriptures, right? They start teaching cunningly devised fables, right? So the Edomites, the rich, they control what? Political, intelligence, religious, churches, educational, and so forth and so on. So the Edomites have absolute power right now because this is their time to rule. Esau and his descendants have dominion over the earth. So they're the rich, all right? The currency that we use, the paper money, the way how we bank, how we buy and sell and conduct business, that's all according to the Rothschilds, the central bankers. So they dictate what currency people is going to use, right? So they're the rich because we're under their system. It doesn't matter what country you go to, you have to operate under their centralized system, right? So they're the rich, ruleth over the poor. Who is the poor? The people that's bound to the system, right? They have to use whatever currency the Rothschilds command all countries to use, right? And it's going to go from using cash and dealing with commercial banks to the digital programmable money coming directly from a central bank in whatever country you're in. And you're going to have a digital wallet, and that programmable money is going to be on the microchip implant when they make it mandatory, which is going to merge you to this new system, right? So we're the poor. It says, in the borrower, which is the poor, is servant to the lender. And the Rothschilds, they're going to use their power because they're in rulership right now. They're going to use their power to what? Have control over people's lives, which is going to lead to the hour of temptation. This is the whole point of the CBDC. So now let's go back. So this is 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. In the KJV, it says, least Satan should get an advantage of us. Now, who's Satan? It's not talking about the actual angel Satan. It's referring to the Satan-like men or the wicked men that govern and control the planet Earth. And ultimately, the Rothschilds, they are the overlords of all societies because, like I said, all countries have a central bank in them, all right? And this is a part of their agenda to cause a global economic collapse. But they're going to disguise their agenda and say, oh, it's inflation, it's hyperinflation, oh, the negative interest rates. They're going to hide it on the media because they don't want you to know their true agenda. Oh, it's de-dollarization. Oh, my God, the dollar's going to collapse. No, this is a part of their agenda. All roads lead to them implementing a CBDC in all countries and implementing ultimately the mark of the beast, which is the RFID chip implant. Whether you want to believe it or not, how that's going to go down, it's going to go down like that. You can already see it. And the icing on the cake is for them to implement that cyber attack, that black swan event. So it says, least Satan should get an advantage of us, for we, the elect of the nation of Israel, which through the blood and sacrifice of Yahushua, we have the Holy Spirit, which is why it says what? We are not ignorant, because to be ignorant, it means to not know of his devices. Now, when you go into this word devices in the Greek, the word there is neoma, right? And it says a mental perception, thought, and evil purpose. And that leads you back to the word conspiracy. Because you people, you don't even understand what the word conspiracy means. The word conspiracy, it just means a plotting of evil. Even though these elite banking families, the so-called powers that be, whether you want to call them Zionists or globalists, they have hidden symbolism and they pretty much promote their agendas in your face. But if you try to expose them, they're going to say, oh, anti-Sim, they'll call you a liar pretty much. They'll say that's not true, even though it's right in your face. So that's a form of witchcraft. That's a form of sorcery, right? So the word conspiracy, it means a plotting of evil by a specific group of people. Whose new world order agenda is this? The Rothschilds, the central bankers, all right? And you have plenty of insiders that have told you this and warned you about this. First beginning with the prophets of the Lord, right? The men of great millstone. And then you have insiders such as Aaron Russo. You have that German economist by the name of Richard Warner. You have a lot of people that expose this agenda. I got all the clips on my channel. Brothers have done videos and they got clips before I even came across it. I mean, it's right there, right? So it says, that which thinks the mind, thoughts, or purposes, going back to what? His evil schemes, his evil agendas, which we're well aware of his agendas. Why? Because through the Holy Spirit, we understand that current events are biblical prophecy. So the Edomites is not doing nothing that the Most High didn't create them to do. The scriptures tell you in Proverbs, the 16th chapter, that the wicked was created for the days of evil. So we're in those evil times, all right? And it's getting ready to be Jacob's trouble very soon. Things is going to get worse in society, all right? Because ultimately, look, his agenda is to have a one-world government, which is controlled by the Edomites, the central bankers. That's why they always say what? Oh, we want other countries to be like China. China's the blueprint for how we want the rest of these nations to be like. Why? Because China is under a centralized system. All right. When it says centralized, meaning it's controlled by the central bankers. All right. Cryptocurrency is a decentralized currency. So they're getting ready to get rid of that. They already got you people on the blockchain network, you know, trading, buying and selling crypto. And now when they do away with crypto and implement the CBDC, all of your assets is going to be converted into digital tokens, aka the CBDC. So that's the whole point of the cyber attack, to reset the system so that everybody has to use digital money now, all right? So a one world cashless currency. What's the one world cashless currency? The CBDC. It doesn't matter what it's called in different countries. It's a one world currency that's going to be put on a microchip implant eventually and made mandatory through the four corners of the earth. It's very clear what they're doing. It says a one world central bank. So all these banks is going to end up closing down. America's central bank is what? The Federal Reserve, meaning the currency is going to have to come from the Federal Reserve. All right. So this is why you see them closing down the commercial banks, aka small banks, and they're getting rid of cash, because this is a part of their agenda. They want de-dollarization. They want all these different things that to society it looks like, you know, it's an economic collapse, the dollar's crashing, but ultimately this is a part of their agenda. All right. So it says, going down here, it says microchip society for purchasing, travel, tracking, and controlling. All events that's going on in the world, you know, everything that's going on concerning the American economy, them talking about a recession that turns into a Great Depression, all this is leading up to Jacob's trouble, and then during that time period, the hour of temptation, all right? So it's clear what they're doing. If you can't see it, you know, you need to pray to the Lord if you're an Israelite. So this is on the NLT. I'm going to end it with this, Jeremiah 30:7. In all history, there has never been such a time of terror. It will be a time of trouble for my people Israel, yet in the end, they will be saved. And the day he's talking about is the elect of the nation of Israel. So all hell is getting ready to break loose, you know, within America, but ultimately the economic collapse here in America is going to turn into a global economic collapse, because the elite banking families want to cause a global economic collapse in order to usher in a new system. So when you look at websites like the worlddebtclock.org, you see it's not just America that's trillions of dollars in debt. It's multiple countries, all right? So the only way to get rid of the debt is to come up with an entirely new system. And that's where the CBDC and ultimately the mark of the beast, which is the RFID chip implant, and a new system, that's where that comes into effect to erase the debt as a solution. All right. So Lord willing, you was edified by this lesson. Shalom.